I don't know.
I'll take a look.
That's your decision, not mine. I've never been inside the house. I just know the person who has it up for sale.
Gotcha.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Economic Development Committee meeting for Monday, May 20th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Ms. Lobeck, would you please call roll?
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Preston,
Here.
Councilmember Mabry, Councilmember Dodwell,
Here,
Councilmember McCutcheon, Councilmember Hopper,
Here.
Councilmember
I was
Hopper.
muted.
Oh, he's muted.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie and Councilmember Galani.
Here. So I believe we do have a quorum, so that's good. Thank you, Ms. Lobeck. Next, we move to election of chair and vice chair. So, Mr. Lee, would you please review for us what the appropriate procedure is for electing the chair and vice chair?
Most definitely. So with the election, in accordance with Robert rules, the most appropriate form of nomination for a standing committee is a nomination from the floor. So in this case, I can make the shorter version. You're okay. In this case, we could do it one of two ways to make this, so I don't have to read the whole thing. One, we could either have all nominations put on the floor by present members right now, and then vote on, if there's only one, vote up or down by the members that are present. Or it could be all nominations are put together and it would be voting for one or the other. So
how do we make a decision between the two methods? Is that the acting chair's decision or?
that can be done by the acting chair. I would say in this case, the preferred method is for the temporary chair to, one second. The kind that Robert Rules emphasizes is an individual gets nominated, they do an up and down vote on that individual. If that person does not get passed through that process, then you go to the next person. That's the preferred method by Robert's rules, but if the committee would elect to, make multiple nominations and then have, how many the ayes for one individual, then the ayes for the other individual, that could also be done, but it would be up to the committee.
I got a question. What about which was the method that we used in council to select the mayor pro tem and the planning and zoning? We basically we did nomination and then we closed nomination, then we went around and each person just said a name instead of
Yes.
yay or nay.
That is.
I think it was
you just said
Council member, whoever, right?
it, as soon as somebody's nominated, then we went around the table and said yes or no. And then if that wouldn't have passed, we would have asked for a second
yes, but it's my
nomination.
understanding, City Attorney Young had said that the one way is where you nominate one or two people and then you go and say, okay, we're going person A, yay, nay, count it up, and then do person B is the one way. And then the other way would be you nominate one or two people, whatever, and then you go around the room and each person says a name. And whoever's got the most.
I think that, and there is like that's per our charter. So that's how we do it for mayor pro temp. It's like the one position that and the liaison is done that way. That being said, I'll actually go ahead and read this item and we can decide as a group tonight. Okay, so under the election piece and nomination, I'll start with nomination. The most appropriate form for a standing committee is nomination from the floor. A member need not be recognized by the temporary chair to make a nomination. So anybody at any time could just speak up. No second is required, but one or more members may second a nomination to indicate endorsement. When nominations have been made from the floor, the temporary chair should inquire whether there are any further nominations, and when there is no response, the temporary chair declares the nominations are closed. Similar to what's in your case, then a roll call vote is taken. In accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, the method of election to be employed to elect the chair of the standing committee shall be an election held by a roll call vote. Thus, immediately following the nomination on the floor, a roll call vote is to be taken, whereupon each member of the standing committee, when called upon, declares his vote of the nominee they wish. Oh, so that would be literally choosing one side or the other. So in this case, my understanding from Robert's rules and the interpretation here is that nominations could be opened by the temporary chair. Nominations are then made and then closed, and then you have your nominees, and then a vote will go around in a circle, and then a vote is taken on which individual out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 5 options here,
Right.
is to be voted upon. I think that's actually the method that.
And you don't have to do multiple rounds.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right.
Mhm.
So,
Rest of the time.
so as temporary chair, then I guess I would open the floor to nominations.
Correct. You would have to actually recognize as a temporary chair of this dog.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
All right,
I would like to nominate Mr. Ottenberg.
I'll
You
second
chair.
that nomination.
Okay.
do we have any other nominations? Apparently not. So now
You would close you would close the floor for nominations.
I am closing the floor for nominating.
And now there would be a roll call vote called out by
Ms. Lobeck, would you please call?
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Councilmember
Yes,
Ottenberg.
yes for Ottenberg.
yes. Councilmember Hopper,
Yes, for Councilmember Ottenberg.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes for Councilmember Ott.
and Councilmember Preston.
Yes, for Councilmember Ottenberg.
Better.
In a landslide victory.
Thank you, thank you. Now we open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Correct. Same exact process for vice chair.
Okay,
I don't care.
okay. So I nominate Councilmember Dodwell for vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay, now you'll close. Oh, wait,
Okay.
ask for any.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? I am closing the floor to further nominations for vice chair. Ms. Lebeck, would you please call for votes?
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes. For Ottenberg.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes, for Dodwell.
Councilmember Ottenberg,
Yes for Dodwell.
Councilmember Hopper,
Yes, for Councilmember Dodwell.
Councilmember Preston.
Yes, for Councilmember Dodwell.
Moving along here, approval of the minutes from the April 23rd, 2024 meeting. So a little clarification here from the city administrator. Since we are approving minutes from the April 4th meeting, we have new members now on the committee.
Yep.
So are they, is it appropriate for them to vote on approval of those minutes since they did not attend that meeting in April?
They can vote on those. If not, though, that is still in their discretion to either abstain or vote against them, make corrections. But in this case, they would be open to vote for them. And we would need, out of a 5-person quorum, we would need 3 votes. That being said, only 2 members that are currently here tonight were served during this time at the last meeting. So this is something that I already discussed with the city attorney. He said you just have to go through the normal process. If it doesn't get voted through, then we'll have to address that at a future date.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions regarding the April 23rd, 2024 meeting notes? If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Councilmember Galani, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? And it's approved. Thank you. Now we move along to public comment. Dr. Bunish, do we have anybody online?
We do not, sir.
Okay. And did our guests sign up to make public comment? Okay, very good. All right, moving on to discussion items then, for information. Committee introductions, I'm wondering if we should proceed with that since we have several members of the committee that are not here. What I was intending to do, just for a little bit of clarification, since we have Councilmember Preston, Councilmember Mabry is not here, just go around and everybody sort of introduce themselves, provide a little bit about their background, that sort of thing. But we're missing 3 members, so I'm wondering if we might not be better off moving this item to the next meeting, which would be in June.
And in this case, to Chair Ottenberg, if I think it might be appropriate, this is just from from the department, but it might be appropriate also to, because it kind of ties into those introductions, to have the general discussion item that's under for action, potentially having that postponed as well, but we can discuss that when it gets to that portion of the agenda.
Okay, so for us to delay the committee introductions to the next meeting, do we need a motion in order to do that, or can we just do that?
In this case, it would be better to have a motion to postpone to the next meeting.
All right, so may I have, anyone like to make a motion to delay committee introductions to the June meeting?
I'll make the motion to push back the committee introductions just till our next June 21st, or whatever meeting, 17th.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Councilmember Galani seconds, thank you. All right, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries, thank you. Next item. City Administrator Lee, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the meeting regarding update on business changes. I think we should go ahead with this, and when we have the June meeting, you know, there'll be some more news and so on. So let's go ahead and proceed with this item.
Most definitely. All right, so in this case, a couple of awesome updates here. First and foremost, with the Communications Economic Development Manager position, this department's been interviewing some individuals for this spot. We've interviewed 2 candidates, and there's one that seems to be a really good fit. We've gotten about 20 applications now, so seen a nice little uptick there, and we're hoping to interview about 1 or 2 more individuals, but I would say that one of the individuals that we've interviewed is very qualified, and we're excited to potentially welcome them. I would say we could be seeing an offer letter in the next couple weeks, so very good in that regard. They'll be potentially at our next meeting. That'd be great. And at the latest, I would say the July meeting, depended on how long that notice would be to give to their current. So in that case, good update there. Also, the Local House Bistro, I know some council members here might have visited there with me and a couple of our staff members here for the Spectrum event, but overall, they started business over on May 1st, and they're located at 16524 Manchester Road. Overall, business has been doing pretty good there. Spoke with the owner, Tim Hulskamp, and he said that they've had, pretty much when they're open, they've only been open for dinner hours, but they've had a wait list and had reservations booked out the entire time, just showing that with a decent product, you know, business can go pretty well there. They are currently working on getting signage put up on its wall signage on the front, and they also have inquired about adding some patio canopies on the side of the building that would cover up the area where people can dine outside. So that's something that we'll need to go through a process. We are currently working with them to see how that goes. And once their wall signage is up, we will be having some kind of ribbon cutting ceremony. It is dependent on whether or not they join the West St. Louis County Chamber. If they don't, then the city will actually be running themselves. So they're currently kind of weighing their options right now. They want to get the wall signage up first and foremost. Next, we have just an update on business license renewals. Those will be going out here soon. And just to give you a head count of businesses currently in the 2024-2025 fiscal year, we've got 162 commercial, 137 home occupation. That number could be different based off the changes in state law that were implemented in 2022. We can no longer force a business to register with the city as a home occupation, so that could be a little bit off. And then 23 medical and nonprofit businesses with a total of 323 that are getting renewal notices here soon. Just a quick note, there's 185 businesses here in Wildwood that are not home occupation, which actually have physical retail space or medical space. A little note on that. And then also just wanted a quick note on the Businesses of Wildwood as an organization. They had an event back on May 2nd, 2024. Chair Ottenberg, Mayor Garitano, and City Administrator, myself, Lee, was present at the event. It was actually held at Lucky Dog Central, which is my next note, located at 16917 Manchester Road. It was a really great event. It seems like that organization is kind of growing, and it had a great turnout. Good to see that we have a little bit of a bounce back after the Wildwood Business Association kind of disassembled, if you will, last year. So it seems like they're coming up strong. Moreover, on Lucky Dog Central, located at 16917 Manchester Road, they are looking to open actually now in the next 4 weeks. So they said about a month. They look to open it looks really nice in there. They've actually converted the space, torn down some walls, and it does seem like they will have a nice little area for a cafe. That being said, we should see them open here in June. Last but not least, wanted to make a quick note, on the old former Benedetto's property. The department met with Mr. Hyde, the broker for Intellica CRE, and this could warrant further discussion, but it seems that they've had quite a few different members of the restaurant owners, if you will, in the St. Louis area has poured the space, but they did not see the profitability with the traffic generation in general, just the daytime traffic not being able to support a lunch crowd. That being said, they did, Mr. Hyde did inquire about the development that's going in across the street and the timetable on that, because he does think that will help engage other businesses and potentially get it filled up quicker. That being said, it does seem that we're gonna be looking at October for permitting on that project and no real construction done until next year. So at this time, had to let him know that, but he was a little bit out of the loop on the sense that he did not know that we had already started construction on the Village Green. So he does plan on leveraging that development, because we will see a significant, I believe, a significant increase in traffic once that project is completed. And then department's available for any questions.
Councilmember Dodd.
I just want to ask the question about the this facility that the Greenberg Group is working on, and if we have a reason why the permitting isn't going to be available until October.
I would say that they were actually moving along pretty quickly, and I'll let our director of planning add if he has anything to add on this, but they were moving well in it was late last year. And then the company that was working to develop the property with them kind of hit a snag, and they had to disconnect from that group. And then they had to go out and find a brand new developer to work on a pretty large project. I mean, these, and I can't actually name a dollar figure, but comparables that you look at other communities that are building these types of developments,
Oh, I know it's.
they're typically around $80 to $100 million, dependent on, exactly where it's at in the property, that's how many floors it is. But in this case, they did have to pretty much disband from one group and then go find a new developing partner.
Did McKelvey pull out of that?
At this time, they are still working on the 13
12
homes.
homes down around the roundabout?
That's the.
That's still moving forward? Okay.
And
Go
with
for
the
it.
chair's permission, there's really three components to the project, as you know, and we're doing the pickleball courts and we've kind of stepped off and are moving forward with that component. McKelvey Homes is in waiting. They're doing the Liberty Series there, one of their upgraded set of units. And so they're just waiting on the site development plan process to be completed, and then they'll start their own architectural review and et cetera. Mia Rosa is now the new multiple family developer. Mr. Cohn, Mr. Greenberg, and that company have, I believe, a memorandum of understanding in place. And I got an email from Mr. Cohn today, and he said that Roseman, which is the architectural firm for the multiple family, has finally updated the layout, and they're getting it to the construction consultant Holland. And then Stock should have it, according to this email, dropped into the new plan and revised grading starting the middle of this week. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, but
Okay.
for right now, Mr. Cohn is hoping to begin some preliminary grading right after the Celebrate Wildwood event.
Okay.
And then be in position once the season opens, meaning winter ends, if we have a winter,
Yeah,
getting started in early 2025.
that would be wonderful. I'm sorry, that's just a huge component within our economic development goals, is having people living in this space here too, so.
This space right there next to the movie theater, is that?
That's
okay,
where we're
okay,
talking
That's
about.
what I thought. Yeah, that's very
They're
extremely
down
important.
to Manchester.
That's an extremely important space for all of us.
180 apartments would be built upon.
That's right.
So that's just additional families walking around the town center.
I can see why it's a deal breaker. I mean,
There's having retail
Yeah.
on the first floor too. Yeah, Councilmember, what's going on?
Just to refresh my memory, I believe the Benedetto's wasn't the main reason that they closed due to staffing issues
That's correct.
versus foot traffic.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
it's interesting that foot traffic seems to be the
Well, and I actually,
objection, because it sounds like they didn't seem to have, because I never went there when it wasn't busy.
It was always.
Yeah, I mean, Wildwood just doesn't really have a lunch crowd anywhere.
yes, and I think that's key too, and that's something I harped on, and at the end of the day, the previous business was doing well. I mean, at least from what the previous owner was saying, they were turning a profit from his vision. It was more so having to get deeply involved in the actual maintenance and running of the business as a family, and that just it couldn't succeed any further because he just didn't want to have to put his own time and his family's time into running that operation. So it can turn a profit, and it was, at least anecdotally from the previous owner. So that was communicated to them, and they did like the idea that we're kind of moving forward, sidestepping, if you will, with the pickleball courts and with the village green. Both should actually increase the amount of foot traffic in general down in the town center anyway. So kind of said, hey, you know, keep up the good work. They have had about 20 businesses walk through that space. So it's not that they haven't been trying, it's just no one has actually decided to pull the trigger on it yet. But they did actually say they'll start bringing people down the street here to show them the construction has started on the village green, which kind of a good thing to leverage now that we have some construction materials.
We just need to get the new economic development person to find some professional businesses to move them down here to be here during the daytime.
Yeah.
Which I know is hard. I know it's been an issue for a long time.
Any other questions for the administrator? I've got one or two questions for the administrator. Business licenses, you made brief reference to the fact that we can no longer mandate business licenses from new businesses. So could you,
Just home-based.
home base, I'm sorry. Would you kind of give a recap of why that was for
Yeah.
the benefit of new members of the committee and maybe for our guests who are attending tonight?
Yeah, so it does, for the state, there was legislation passed back in 2022. Back before, let's kind of compare and contrast what we could do before and after. Before that legislation was passed, the city was able to, just as if they did with normal businesses, to operate a business in Wildwood in a retail plaza. You'd have to get a business license and a reoccupancy permit showing that you can occupy the space. In this case, we were able to do the same thing with home-based occupation, business occupations. And say someone's running just like the accounting of a business, that they go out and do other things, they're not actually on the site working there, that's fine. But they would need to register with the city, pay a $25 fee. But the most important thing is that they would register that business with the city. So if we saw advertisements about it, or if we started getting complaints about having some, work trucks parking out front, or potentially having, customers coming to a home, those are really the big pieces, is the city's ability to know where these businesses are located. So we can ensure that people aren't operating a real business, if you will, in a residentially zoned area. So that's the main concern now, is that now the city can send out renewal notices just like we normally would. That being said, there is no need for the individual home-based business owner to get back to us whatsoever. They could just ignore it, unfortunately. But before they couldn't, and we could actually attach late fees onto it and eventually let them know that, hey, if you don't let us know one way or the other, it could end up in municipal court. That's happened on sometimes operating a business without a license on the retail front, but typically it would not have to go that far. It's about $25 fee. But the main thing I would say more important than a fee that was generated was the fact that the city had kind of a database of the individual businesses that were operating in residential areas and was able to look to that list if we got calls regarding all types of different things, that riffraff, if you will, that could be going on in those areas. That's the main piece.
And I believe, according to our legislative consultant, that the state legislators who put this bill in place, that when passed, no longer required home-based businesses to take out a license, didn't quite fully understand what the ramifications of their legislation would be, and they were going to go back and try to fix it. Have we heard anything more about any attempts that were made to fix that legislation?
So there was no real attempts to fix it. That being said, our consultant has kind of shook around, but it really, our consultant's been really focusing on getting that budget appropriation with outside of this committee, the watershed erosion. That being said, Session just closed out on Friday last week. That being said too, he said next year we could have a focus on this if this is something we'd like to push.
Okay.
But right now, there's no one currently willing to sponsor the bill. Tony Lavasco was the representative state rep that passed that legislation.
Thank you. One other question I have is Mint and Martini.
Mhm.
Do they have a projected opening date yet?
They do not. They are there. If you go over there, it seems like some work has been done. They have all the proper permits that would be required to open up. That being said, they have no opening date. We've reached out a couple times. They worked with us pretty closely to get all the permitting, but we just haven't heard anything back. They said it was gonna take about 6 weeks, and that was about 5 or 6 weeks ago. But
All right, perfect. And for the new members of our committee and for our guest here tonight, Mint and Martini is an Indian restaurant that will be located in the old building that housed both Llewellyn's and Botanic.
and they,
So the owner is the same owner that operates, I believe it's called Red Chili over in Chesterfield.
it's right next to the old Chesterfield Mall that.
Yeah,
Um,
my dentist right by.
yeah, they
Where
didn't.
Twin Peaks used to be, right?
Yeah, right there.
And a note on their work, they actually, if you go over to that location, the inside is immaculate and they did a really good job at restoring the outside of that building as well. I'm pretty excited to see what they do out here and I think it's gonna be a
Signage
popular
was up
space.
when we parked over there for the Music on Main on Friday. And so,
I think, quite frankly, I think it'll be a pretty popular place once it gets open and with the popularity, they've done really well in Chesterfield as well. So I think that, you know, once those two start really kind of jiving a little bit more, I think that that could potentially help get the Benedetto space filled too, because, you know, just a couple months ago, we had 3 vacancies within our restaurant community and now at least we got 2 out of the 3. So I think we're chipping away
Yeah,
slowly but surely.
All right, very
might
good.
make it even tougher for staffing though.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments regarding the update on business changes? Very good. So moving along then to a review of the 2022 occupancy report, and let's go ahead and go through that review, if you would, city administrator, and I will ask those who could not attend the meeting tonight to get with you separately and have you update them.
Of course, Chair, and thank you. These numbers haven't changed too much since 2022, so that's why we've repurposed the data. That being said, we also stopped subscribing to CoStar that provided such a nice little beautiful amount of compact data that they used to have. That being, it is a pretty extreme cost, just to give a background on why we don't have CoStar. We used to be able to subscribe just to the St. Louis region, which was pretty cheap. You know, it wasn't necessarily cheap, but it was not that expensive. Now they make every user subscribe to the United States database, which gives you literally data on occupancy rates in San Francisco, which is not really that beneficial to the, you know, the St. Louis area. I mean, it isn't. So the cost along with that, since you're getting access to a larger database, ended up, let's just say it multiplied by 10 times and it became the city was not able to afford being able to put that much money towards that program.
And city administrator, if you don't mind, a little bit of background on this request I made of the city administrator to review this occupancy report. And maybe this is primarily for the benefit of the new members of this committee, but the city administrator and I would hear from time to time from various residents and so on that you know, we have too many vacancies downtown, that we have more vacancies than other surrounding communities. And we would just sort of hear this sort of what I will call a broad brush comment. So city administrator and I got talking and he said, let's go out and put together some information to verify where we are at versus other communities to see, is our vacancy rate higher or is it lower? You know, where are we at compared to other communities? Where are we at compared to the county in general? So that's what prompted this research that the city administrator did some time back. And I thought I would have him review this primarily for the benefit of the newer committee members, so that when residents ask you what's happening in town center, or they make these comments about the vacancy rate in town center, then we can answer those questions and concerns. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's quite all right, Chair Ottenberg. So in this case, to hit off on the point that you had just mentioned, Really important note is that the Wildwoods retail occupancy rate, it is a little bit lower than our office occupancy rate. You know, it's about 4.52% below average when you take into account of all St. Louis County and also some just around that same percentage mark if you take into account some of our neighboring municipalities, some that fall within Franklin County as well. On top of that, the office occupancy rate is actually very much close to the average. It's about 0.24% off, which is great to see. And when you actually start looking across the country, I started kind of poking around here. We're actually in pretty decent shape with these numbers. This is pretty on par with, you'll see a lot of retail sector and especially in more, right now in Baltimore, I believe it's at 82.3%. In some other large cities across the country, you're really focusing around 75 to 80% that you're at in occupancy. So compared to that, our retail is actually flourishing at 88.62%. And then office is doing a lot better at 91.66. And actually office has gone up just a little bit because we've had a couple buyouts over in the Westridge Office Center. So you actually could see that go up just a bit. Another item here is just, and I wanted to kind of go over these variables. And it's more so the kind of taking a look at that perception, one being the amount of actual space in general that we have. You know, the perception is that, you know, one restaurant or one business goes out in Wildwood. I brought up this example back in 2022 that if you compare Baldwin's total amount of square footage for retail and Wildwood's total amount of square footage for retail and office space, in Baldwin, you have a total of about 5.1 million square feet. In Wildwood, you have about 642,000. So if one space leaves, if you see a boutique restaurant or a boutique in general that sells clothing leave, it leaves a bigger dent in Wildwood than it would in Baldwin just because you have much more space that's already still occupied. So something to kind of keep in mind is that when we lose a business, the perception is larger in Wildwood versus some of our other neighboring municipalities like Chesterfield, Baldwin, and Ellisville. Another thing is these are just items to keep in mind with our occupancy rates in general is that our access to the interstate is about 20 minutes away from major interchanges, which causes trouble with staffing, also causes issues with just getting general traffic from individuals that are outside of Wildwood, which will actually be very interesting in the report that we discuss next. I can point out a couple stats of how many people are actually leaving Wildwood.
And when you say that, we've got Ellisville, Baldwin. They're not next to an interstate either.
That is true. And I would just say well, Wildwood, I would say is a little bit further, you know, but Ellisville maybe so, but they also allow development right onto Manchester too. It's a little bit more in your face, but I would say that the 20-minute drive. So,
I'm being the devil's advocate
well,
here,
I think that's a good point.
because I want us to think about that a little bit.
Well, do you have any comments on that? But I would say that, you know, generally, you know, the visibility, access to the interstate are things that we've had that individuals that own businesses are the ones coming out here saying. I will say that Baldwin takes about 20 minutes. You're right. It does take about 20 minutes to get to Highway 40 from there too. So it's a fair approach.
City Administrator Lee, I think you and I have talked about the vehicular traffic that goes through town center, and our vehicular traffic, I believe, is somewhere around 22,000 vehicles a day. Is that correct?
That is correct. So in our town center, so that's pretty much Manchester and Taylor and Main Street. You're looking at around 22,000 cars per day. And that was a pretty comprehensive study that was done in 2017. It kind of projected outwards. And I don't know the exact stats, but I do remember looking back on that data and you were seeing pretty much where Clarkson's at, anywhere east of Clarkson, you were seeing that 50,000 number then.
That's that one, yeah.
So and that's what the numbers, when I was looking at the original stats, when doing this report back in 2022, what you found was you were at usually like, let's just say for instance, like a McDonald's, they're looking to find a space to fill in. They're gonna use 50,000 usually as a benchmark. If you don't get 50,000 cars per day, they're not even gonna look at that location. You know, they're not even gonna go take a look at it. They're not gonna look any further. That's the first stat they're looking at. We're at 22,000 in our main economic sector area, our town center. So that does hurt us a little bit when trying to attract the more broad. We're a mom and pop shop city, which that's something we
I'm
might.
just
do
trying to
different.
figure out because I'm the old lady in the room and I remember when Manchester you'd go down Clarkson and
You
It
were
was-
the council member with the most seniority. maybe.
yes, I am the council member with most seniority and I'm also maybe the oldest one in the room right now, but that's okay. No, I think Joe's older than me, but. But I remember going down Manchester when there was nothing there as a teenager. And so I don't want that replicated here in Wildwood, obviously, but how did that happen? Was it just all the subdivisions that got built? That's just my question. I keep trying to figure out the equation to something that would bring more tax dollars in for the city and more amenities for our residents. So I don't have an easy answer. I don't know what they did differently other than they started popping up with lots of subdivisions.
I mean,
I think one of the things, go ahead.
oh, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I think one of the issues is that, the town center, high density zoned area
Mhm,
for the master plan, it needs to be developed.
mhm.
So our city council has a long history of, I would go out on a limb and say anti-development. And
Yeah,
I can tell you, being tied to real estate and stuff, I mean, the city of Wildwood has a terrible reputation amongst all developers in St. Louis. So, I mean, that's something that we've created, and I understand that we have to have sensible development. And I think most people support that, but I feel like when developers do bring potential projects to the table, we're very quick and aggressive to shoot it down and nitpick the living, what out of it.
mhm,
And it's within our purview to do that, but we're basically scaring everybody away, because what the thing is, people spend, and I'll just use an example right now, like, remember the reserve that was over there that Payne was trying to do? I mean, that was 7 years that they spent well over $1 million just trying to get the site plan approval, and we were putting them through the ringer and back and forth. So I'm just saying, I hear from some of the developers and I talk to different commercial, and now that particular project, just to put in perspective, like Payne sold to Fisher. And now now they've got another developer coming in. And they already have the site plan approval, but they're gonna have to make some adjustments. And I can already smell the blood in the water, and half the council's gonna be ready to try to kill the deal because
mhm.
they're looking for a loophole to do it. And so, in the conversation we had last Monday night about that triangular piece over there by Brightleaf,
Mhm.
and then the apartments over here. And I mean, once again, there's always gonna be some residents that are opposed to every development, no matter where it is and no matter what the style of, and I get it, and of course, every voice needs to be heard. But I also think we have to have a little more proactive approach to listening to these developers and doing everything we can to, at least, if you think about it, only 2% of our entire city is zoned high density. And we're taking that 2% and pretending like it's 90%.
Mhm.
And we've stuck really hard to our 3-acre minimum and all the other natural beautification components of the city and everything. But to me, that's an important deal. I know it can become very controversial very quickly. But the fact that we still have developers that are coming to the table and putting forth projects and ideas and trying to work with us in spite of the fact of, our reputation and what we've done, I think is a good thing. And I think we better be careful when we're talking about, like, I think sometimes we want our cake and eat it too, right? Like, we want to kill every development, we don't want any development. But we also want all these restaurants and stores, and we want people around and traffic and everything. I mean, you gotta have one to have the other. And so I think we need to me, I think one of the important characteristics for economic development is that we figure out how to make sure that this 2% high density area in town center is developed to a max. And I think right now we're being antithetical to that process, and we're not doing it. And so at some point, the developers that are around are gonna finally just say, we're done with Wildwood. Like, they say one thing and they do another. And so and then we're gonna be stuck.
Well, I'm concerned about the tax revenue.
We're down this year.
We're down this year for our tax revenue. We've got a bill that I'm not sure if it was passed or wasn't passed, where you cannot sales tax groceries.
That didn't go through.
That didn't go through? Oh,
Mhm.
good. Thank goodness. Because those are our two biggest stores
Mhm.
in the whole city of
Yes.
Wildwood. If that would have happened, then we would have been pulling out of reserves probably for next year's budget. And so I appreciate the housing that we've been able to develop in the area, but if we don't start developing businesses that can generate some ongoing tax revenue for the city of Wildwood, we're not gonna be able to continue to have updates to the parks or even the general maintenance on the parks.
And that will hopefully be the number one priority of our new economic development manager.
Yes.
And the person comes on
I'm
board.
sorry.
No,
I
you're good.
made
You're
us all
fine.
digress.
No, that's
Well,
good.
I mean, to that point though, I
That's all
mean,
good discussion.
you take, I mean, it's like you enter a whole nother world when you get west of Old State, Manchester. I mean, that, completely changes the background, the scenery. You have almost nothing till you get to the Schnucks Center, and you have some development on the left-hand side there into the Tierbergs, but I mean, that's the difference between us, Ellisville, Alwyn, Chesterfield. I mean, every main street there, I mean, is effectively lined with businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Manchester that goes all the way. I mean, it doesn't stop until you get to basically the end of the
Shodo.
city. Yeah, Shodo, right. And
All of our problems would probably be solved if we just took Route 100 and routed it through town center.
well,
No,
I mean,
I mean, I'm being
No,
sarcastic,
no,
but
no, no.
but we need
but
to
that-
have,
but that points out the issue that we have that our town center is offset from a major highway. Whereas 100 goes right through Ellisville. You have Clarkson going right through Ellisville and
Mhm.
Baldwin. And
I still think it's people though.
yeah,
I mean, you gotta have more residential development, in my opinion, because,
Yeah.
we've got such a massive area of land for our city, right? It'll be the third largest in the state from a land
yeah.
perspective. But we also, like I said, outside of that 2% high density area, we're 3 acre minimum. So
There's
when
nothing
you,
west.
and then we got a lot of rural area and we're 1 and 6, so if you think about it, yeah, we've got a lot of land mass, but 35,000 people is not a massive population.
Right.
For the size of the city that we
If
have.
you go to another town that has 35,000 people, you're gonna see a heck of a lot more. I mean, across the state and various
Mhm.
towns the size of, I'm trying to think of Sullivan along 44 or,
But they're much smaller land mass of a city. We're
Exactly.
spread out so much that
Exactly.
where if we have this 2% high density area, my point being is that if we want to have a
but if we had.
epicenter of activity and people and businesses, we've got to bring more residential development into the area where we allow it to
So we
be.
have to bring something that they wanna come see. Do you
Like-
drive to Clayton to go to a restaurant? Do you drive to Clayton to go do something? Do you drive into St. Louis City to go do something? Yes,
Well,
you
the
do.
businesses need the people before they'll come. I think. Like, they're not gonna come open a business with leases, personnel and everything else and say, okay, now we're here, go approve some residential development. They're gonna want the people and the residential development to be here and then they'll come, because. And the thing is, if people want restaurants and stores, they could still buy a home here
Mhm.
and drive 2 miles to Ellisville to eat or shop.
Mhm.
But then if you build a store or a restaurant right in their backyard, they're gonna go there instead of driving down the street. So that's why I just think we have to be hyper focused on just figuring out ways to, like I said, make sure it's sensible, make sure it meets our, I'm not saying wild, crazy things or anything, but let's take this high density area and do what the master plan has said for it to be done and then get it done. And I think that in and of itself will drive tons of people to the Village Green. It'll drive tons of people to the businesses we already have, and it'll also attract other businesses to want to come in.
So if we circle back to the beginning of your comments, that all has to do with population density. and
Correct.
developing these areas
Traffic
here.
and people.
And that goes back to the presentation that I made to the Crown Point Estates subdivision when I talked about population density and the comparison of population density here, which is about 534 people per square mile versus Baldwin, where it's about 3,444 people per square mile.
Mhm.
So if you're a business looking to put a location somewhere and you have to choose between Wildwood and Baldwin, you're probably going to choose Baldwin every single time.
Yeah.
It's numbers.
Yeah, fair.
Now,
Very
you
simple
made
to do
a good point, off the point. And we had a number of residents at our last council meeting make the suggestion that the area that makes up the point be turned into a park. And what most of them probably do not realize is that the city does not own that land, that is privately held land. So that would not be an easy solution in order to implement. So that might be something, maybe getting a little bit off topic here, but the next time we have that discussion in council about the point, however we work it in, it might be good to let everyone who may be sitting out in the audience know that the city does not own that property. And so it would not be an easy solution as some residents think it would be.
Yeah, there were a number of people who were like, oh, they should donate to the trail.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lose a couple million bucks, but, well, and even the, you know, the people that own the reserve, I mean, it's multiple families that own that land and it's been generational, right? And so,
Yeah.
you know, I know the gentleman that represents the families as the realtor that's selling the property. And I mean, they've had numerous owners, because I think there's 7 families that own that property or 8, and at least 2, if not 3 of them have passed away during this process. Another one just passed away like a couple months ago. So like, I mean, these poor folks are all dying off without ever seeing this land, and they're paying like $40-some thousand a year in the no, it's the improvement district. What was it? Was it a NIT or a SID that they did for the sewer system? And it was like $800,000 over 19 years.
Okay.
So they're still paying the last couple of years of $45K a year, and they're sitting on this land that they can't do anything with until we allow a developer to come in and do it. So I mean, just those are the kinds of things that we have to take action.
So I'm gonna circle back around now to City Administrator Lee. What else would you like to let us know about this study?
Well, speaking of population density, the last page of that memorandum actually has the population density, so feel free to take a look at that. You can see that we have the lowest and great example, Baldwin being around that 3,400 number, 3,500. Just some other items to take into note with that population density, you know, that we do have the town center, which is meant to 1.8% of the 1.8 square miles. And it does make up the only areas that we can have that density. So that is the place that we're not going to have commercial really go outside of there. One other note here is just when you take a look at the major retail centers, when I say major, I'm saying Deerberg's Plaza and the adjacent properties, the Schnucks Plaza, the plaza here that doesn't have a name, it's called Building D, correct? Yeah, Building D. The broker calls it Main Town Center because they don't own the other buildings, but you do actually see that retail occupancy rate drop a little bit, and that is still consistent, especially with Benedetto's leaving. That was a decent amount of square footage, especially on that property. So looking at the major, you know, the front, that's another thing too, is even though some of the more hidden properties in the town and the city are nice and full, the individual properties that are most resident facing tend to be a little bit less occupied. So that also could be adding to the perception. So that's the department's available for any questions, but just adding those 2 notes, and also great discussion there too.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the city administrator regarding the occupancy report? So then moving on to item D, the local economic area report. Item by the St. Louis Association of Realtors and Realtors Property Source.
Thank you, Chair Ottenberg. I just wanted to add this for additional context. They actually put this report together by request. You can have them put it together for your city. Very nice of them. So I want to give them credit where credit's due. And this data does come from the Realtor Property Resource. So just giving everybody credit where this report came from. Real quick, some notes. Wildwood, just looking at some of the data they have presented here, Wildwood actually makes about 3.5% of the population of St. Louis County. So one thing to make a note of there, even though we are the 3rd biggest geographic city, just out of our county, we only have 3.5% of the population. One other nice note to have here is that we did actually see more population growth since 2010 than St. Louis County did with almost 2% growth. So that's something nice to see. And also when you compare that to county, it's good to have a little bit more growth out here in Wildwood. One really important statistic, the reason why I really wanted to add this was just to kind of confirm the daytime population that we discussed here, how we have we are a bedroom community. The daytime population is different than the general population because general population is where people go home. Daytime population is how many people work here is really the best way to look at it. And you'll see that we have about 24,289 residents in the daytime. We lose about 11,090 each day. They all are usually, and you'll see in the data of where they drive, typically they're going to St. Louis City. And if you look at the data of who makes up our population, almost 75% of individuals are either in this very high median household income or, just more of a family go-getter and has multiple people at their households, typically families. You'll actually see that Wildwood has more families on average, with the average household size being at 2.82. The closer you are to 3, the more you're to be a family with children. So in that case, that's actually a little bit higher than St. Louis County as a whole. So that does show that we're a little bit more family oriented. On top of that too, you do see the daytime population density. Sorry to skip around here, but you actually see it go from about 550 to 363 during the daytime. So a lunch crowd is a little bit tough with that type of density number. Another item here of note, real quickly, is that our population is it does skew a little bit older than St. Louis County, not by much. You have about 44.4 is the median age in Wildwood. And then you have in St. Louis County about 41.9. And then in Missouri, it's a little bit younger at 39.6. So nothing too crazy. It's not a large jump. Interestingly enough, though, a lot of our residents are in kind of that age between 40 and 70, with a lot of teenagers as well. Kind of showing that, where the high school is coming from. But we still have a decent amount of kids too. So just kind of understanding what makes up our residents is really important here. And then another item wanted to note was that our average household income is 193,000. So that number shows that our residents, they do have the money to spend on a local economy. That being said, you will see a lot of the time that, and if you look at the average disposable income, it's at 132,000. That shows that there is the money to spend to support the local economy here, but you'll actually see that most individuals do travel to Chesterfield, Ellisville, Baldwin, and some do stay around the city to spend that money. That being said as well, Clarkson, when you look at all these studies, typically Clarkson is kind of the dividing line. Usually you'll see people going east from Clarkson. You don't typically see people that live west of Clarkson. You'll see people living west of Clarkson come east, but you don't see people east of Clarkson going west. So that's kind of an item to maybe discover in the future of how do you attract the individuals from, or do you just bring those individuals over here? That is maybe the discussion. How do you get them into Wildwood that are living currently east of Clarkson? And then how do you potentially just bring those people over here to live here, which could be backed up by some more residential development potentially in our town center. The other item that I wanted to note was that, kind of interestingly enough, during COVID, you can actually see kind of that huge hit. If you look at the unemployment rate, you see that it almost jumped up to about 15% in the nationwide. You could see St. Louis kind of took not St. Louis, St. Louis County and Missouri kind of took the same type of hit, but Wildwood was actually most shielded. It was around 6.7%, which relatively, that was actually really good considering what happened there. So it kind of just shows that individuals that are working within Wildwood, they're typically going to, what you'll find here is going to St. Louis City. They hold higher positions in a lot of these jobs, and they kind of are essential employees to these jobs, which is why you can maybe see that less of an impact when COVID hit. You'll also note that we're a very well-educated community. Most individuals, the majority of the population at least has a bachelor's degree, with a lot of individuals actually more in St. Louis County and a lot more than Missouri's total at 26.9 having a grad or professional degree. And last, there's one other notation here. I wanted to also note that this is actually really interesting was the commute and then how people are getting to work. And then really Some home value, the home value is actually, it's about 265,000 more than the average home in St. Louis County. So kind of goes along with the economic factors that were put in here. But really interesting, you'll see that about 30 minutes to 60 minutes is the majority of individuals here. 45 to 60 minute and the 30 to 35 minute time frame. So it seems that it kind of adds up well with Clayton and also St. Louis City. So it shows that most of our residents are leaving, they're going east in the morning versus staying around town. And you do see around about 11,000 people leave Wildwood each day to go to their job. And then the second, if you look at how do people get to work, you also see a whole nother grouping of them, about 13.1% of our population is actually working from home. So maybe that is something that we can look to as generating some daytime traffic for our lunch crowds is that, hey, if you're working from home, maybe some kind of promotional activity for those individuals that are working from home to make sure they buy lunch in the city. So that department's available for any questions, but just wanted to kind of give a general overview. We can get these reports up from the Realtors Association every couple of months or so. I'd almost say maybe twice a year. If you'd like, if the committee finds it beneficial, it's something we can provide as for information item. Definitely want to introduce it as a resource since it does kind of break out the demographics of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, City Administrator. Any final questions for him on this topic?
I think this is a really good
Yeah.
document to help guide and direct us as we go forward. I mean, granted, I don't think we need to do it every month or anything, but certainly needs to be handed to a new economic development person with a discussion with you.
And nice to see that, make sure that we're going in the right direction on all these.
Yeah.
It's interesting too on that commute comparison. I wonder if there's some metadata in that when you look at that, because I'm in that, I mean, I drive into Clayton every day for work, so it takes me 35, 40 minutes, give or take. But you wonder, when the overwhelming majority is 20 to 25, 30 to 35, and then 45 to 60, how many of those people, if that prevents an underlying issue for us, that people are used to driving that way to work every day, so they're not hesitant to leave the town to go places when they want to go spend money.
Good point.
It's like, hey, do it every day, what's the difference?
Yeah.
And then you also see, I mean, that's a good point too to bring up because when you look at it too, it's not like these individuals are carpooling, they're driving to work alone.
Yeah.
They're comfortable. That means they usually would have some kind of system in place. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's something that can get them to and from and they're not really worried about the drive.
Yeah, it's not, a deterrent to say,
Can't listen to a podcast with the kids in the car.
No, you can't. No, you can't.
That is true.
Just the thing, I mean, you hate to make the situation seem more dire, more difficult, but I mean, that's a component you can't change. People are used to driving and, you go in town every day. Oh, man, Clayton's got all these great new restaurants. I want to go try them out. People won't be hesitant to make the 35-minute commute in there on a Friday night rather than stay out here. So
So for the committee in general, these two reports give us a nice baseline of where we're at today and maybe generate some ideas for where we can go in the future. By taking a look at this information. So City Administrator Lee, the local economic report, I mean, we have it here, but can you get that into the hands of those who are not here tonight?
Oh, of course, most definitely.
All right, perfect. Very good. Moving on to ready for action, creation of a job board on the city website.
Thank you, Chair Ottenberg. Couple of background items since we do have some new committee members here. Back in March, on March 26, 2024, at its Economic Development Committee meeting, the committee brought up the context of our staffing issues. We do have a staffing shortage reported from a lot of different businesses here in Wildwood. And also we do have some interested parties that might not know where to go to maybe find maybe a summertime job or a part-time job here in our community. So at the April 23rd, 2024 meeting, we actually did discuss the idea of creating some type of job board on the city website where individual businesses would not be able to post. It's not a platform. It would still be the city being a publisher. But what we had decided upon is in concept that sounds good. We wanted to run it by the city attorney. City attorney seems to be okay with what we've produced tonight, which this form, pretty much how it will work. The committee's endorsement is that if an employer wanted to reach out and they have a valid Wildwood business license, so they are legally able to operate in the city of Wildwood. If they wanted to reach out to us with their address, their name, just the job title. We don't want to get into the responsibilities, roles, or anything like that, or compensation. You know, want to start putting that on the website, but we could have a dedicated page on the city website that would pretty much outline, here are all the local Wildwood business jobs that are open. It would be up to the employer or the business to reach out to us and say that that job has been filled. So this does depend a little bit on the individual applying. That being said, we would require the hiring manager to provide their contact information to the city if we were to move forward with this program. And we would take these applications after this form is filled out, and we would run through it, make sure it doesn't have any discriminatory language. It's not some kind of off-brand, if you will, if they're not trying to actually use it for the right reason. Make sure they're a Wildwood business and they're legally registered to do business in Wildwood. If all those criteria are met, then we would be able to kind of create a little summary based off the information they provide on what the opening is. And the idea and goal of this is, going into summer and then potentially going into the school season, having a kind of a one-stop shop for those part-time or summertime seasonal job workers, job seekers that are looking to find that role, but make sure it's close to home so they don't have to drive, 45 minutes to not maybe make as much money. Maybe having it be in one central location. And then if that seems to work well, if we start getting, 15 to 30 businesses that sign up in 6 months and they've seen some success with it, I assume that Schnucks, Deerbergs, would be ones to probably take advantage, maybe the movie theater. It could potentially be a nice place for not only the job seekers, but the individuals that are needing that turnover staff, to find individuals, be a kind of a connecting source. So we would then, if approved tonight, we could bring it back in 6 months. And if it hadn't seemed to got the traction we wanted, didn't seem to get too many jobs filled, didn't seem to get too much interest from the business community after reaching out to them, then we could reassess at that point. But one thing to keep in mind is that to update and keep this web page fresh, it will take staff time. So that's the main thing is, in 6 months, if we want to go forward, or maybe even 3 months, shorter time frame, are we seeing the benefit of actually having these posted? Are you having these hiring managers come back and say, we found maybe 2 positions and we were able to fill because they found it on their website? And do those hiring managers get back to us and let us know that information?
Do you have the staff time to devote to this now?
At this time, yes, as long as we don't get overwhelmed with 15 million, but with the new EDC manager coming in as well, I think that will be very helpful. I would say I would feel comfortable starting it, and then I just don't think it'll have I don't think all 150 retail businesses that we have are gonna sign up. But I could see, initially about 10 to 20 that could be very interested, and if we see that, that would be.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Councilmember Hopper has his hand up, and hopefully you haven't had it up too long, because I just noticed that you've got it up, so please proceed.
No, just up for a minute there. But I will say that as far as this idea goes, one, I was just curious. I mean, I know there's staff time, but just in general, if we had an idea around cost of doing this. I know of a couple of other cities that have done this, Webster Groves in particular, and they really didn't get much traction with it. There's outdated job postings on there. The businesses just kind of started to post some stuff and then they kind of forgot about it. And I guess for me, I'm more concerned about the long-term reception and visibility of an item like this. If we're not getting updates, but other people are going in and looking at it like, oh, this stuff's all like 2 years old. It just then becomes almost a detractor instead of an attractor for some businesses or even for residents too. So I would just be a little concerned about kind of the ROI on this type of a thing, of what we would truly get out of it, what the benefit would be that we would see from doing it. It's not a bad idea. I'm just, kind of looking at, is it going to be worth somebody's time to have to sit and kind of monitor this and track stuff down and go through all that stuff? I just think we'd get a minimum really bit of traction with it, and that's probably about it. And I think it would be short-lived.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
2 questions. Can we set up the website so that after 3 months, the job gets pulled?
That's something we could do. We wanted to have it.
So that it forces the businesses to get back in touch with us to repost, and we don't have old stuff out there. I think we could make the the computer system do that and not have an employee have to do that kind of stuff. And then will we be mailing each of the businesses in the city a little letter or a little flyer saying, hey, if you've got job openings, we're willing to post them.
We would plan to, we have contact information from our business licensing. We would be emailing them out just because
Sure.
we could
But it's
theoretically,
always cheaper to do email and it's more in their face anyway.
and we could look into mailing. I could get the cost associated. It wouldn't be too much, actually,
I
with
wouldn't
the
want to-
150
By
businesses.
mailing them then, modern mailing, I'm sorry.
Well, in this case, though, no, we would be, what the plan was to email out and then see what kind of traction we get from that. And then with any business, our farmer's market that we got going on up here, any businesses that have, employees that they would potentially want to hire. There's not many that participate in that, that have actual employees, but also anyone that maybe comes to the next business forum, all the different events we have, Celebrate Wildwood, when we're interacting with them, just having this as kind of a reminder. But I do think Mr. Hopper does have a good point in the fact that it really is dependent on the hiring managers and how engaged they are. If they want to actually utilize the tool, it could be an amazing source of knowledge for individuals that are looking for a part-time job. If they do not get back to us in a timely fashion, then it could make the city not look as good in the sense that we could have outdated information. I like the 3-month rule. I think maybe a test period is important here. If we don't see the traction we want, then maybe it's something that we need to leave it.
At the next Wildwood Business Forum, could we ask the question of the businesses as to whether it would be, did we do that at our forum back in February?
No,
That was not asked. And the next one is it's September or
September.
It's September.
Yeah, September.
So they'll miss the summer rush or.
But maybe that would be something that we could postpone and have this same item brought up at the October,
I'd
September
say
meeting.
run it through the summer and then go ask them.
And maybe this is something that we run it, well, we test it in the summer, and if we see a drop off after the summer, it could be like the summer job.
It's like a seasonal.
Yeah, like, cause I mean, that's really where, the summertime is where you're seeing the most need for something like this.
so what action would the city administrator like us to take tonight on
In
this?
this case, I would say having a test, kind of a pilot study of this and maybe have it run to the September business forum. We can get feedback from the business community on that night, that morning. And then if the concurrent, whatever the September date for the council, the committee meeting is, that would be the day we can have it revisited. So that would encompass all summer. We'd also get feedback from the businesses to include in report, and we'd be able to come back with a number of
Maybe
businesses
just
that came in.
Your website.
Yeah.
So you are looking for a motion to proceed with the implementation of a city job board to run through the end of
September 2024.
Okay, and then at that point in time, we will review whether or not it has been effective.
Yep.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'll entertain a motion to do that, if somebody would like to make it. Councilmember Galani makes the motion. Councilmember Dodwell seconds. Pardon?
Councilmember Preston can have that.
Yeah. They wanted to give her.
All right, perfect. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. General discussion of economic development in Wildwood, so this would be a continuance of the discussion that we were having earlier.
I think we actually covered it quite well
Okay.
earlier, and if you don't mind, Mr. Chair.
No, please go ahead.
It might be just with like the introductions, it might be best to have this postponed until the June meeting where we have the full board here. Just because it goes into what we're currently doing and then kind of going over, I wanted to get perspective from anybody that has not served on the board. What their perspective on economic development is, so we could all have it out in the open and then discuss what potential agenda items could be on there. I mean, theoretically, though, we could just have the same discussion next time as well. We
Okay,
could have it now and then have it again next month.
all right. Yeah, I like the idea of waiting until June. So we'll do that. Miscellaneous items, does anyone have any miscellaneous items to bring up? I have one or two. Other committee members, if they have any miscellaneous items to bring up. Yeah, So, City Administrator Lee, you and I talked about possibly seeing if we can determine the date for the tour to Wildwood in fall.
Yep,
Do we have a date? or-
not a specific date. It would need to be late October.
All right, that's fine. And then the other thing I was going to mention is one of the reasons that you'll recall I brought that up is we were discussing the idea of using that as a vehicle to promote some of the health and wellness oriented businesses we have here in the city. Our new mayor has pointed out at several HOA meetings that Wildwood is becoming a center for health and wellness. The number of companies we've got here, everything from the YMCA, JMB Wellness Cafe to SSM Healthcare to a number of yoga businesses, as well as we have the exercise coach, Alloy Personal Training, et cetera. And we're trying to come up with a way to possibly promote that fact as another method to bring people into the town center area, which is what we were talking about, trying to do earlier.
Isn't there also a run going on out in like Henkin Valley this fall? My sister-in-law from Miami was talking about coming in for it. That's the reason I even know about it. They
There
were
was a
gonna,
5K this weekend.
this was gonna be like a half marathon.
City Administrator Lee, do you know anything about that?
Do you know anything?
Wait, what?
My sister-in-law was talking about some, coming into town for some runoff of like Henkin Valley this fall.
Joe, are you aware of it? I'm not aware personally.
Oh, cause I hadn't heard of it either, but my
You
wife.
should
was
have a
asking about it.
special event permit, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would think so, right? Okay, well, maybe it's not happening then.
Okay,
Who knows?
It could be somebody that's doesn't understand the requirements we have here in the city, that's trying to put something
that
together.
sometimes does.
Yeah,
Ask your sister for some more information if you don't mind, and.
yeah, I'll ask, my wife will know more than it's her sister, so I'll
Oh,
find
okay.
out, but
Yeah, and then let the city administrator or Mr. Boonich know.
yeah, there's a clandestine run about to take place over in Wildwood.
If they'd like some police support to keep the roads clear,
Yeah, right. Well,
definitely it would be a good idea to let the city know.
All right, super. Any other miscellaneous items?
We have some guests. Do we know who these guests are?
Would the guests be kind enough to introduce themselves?
Yeah, I'm Jenny Green and I'm on the business of the Wildwood, so they encourage people to come, so I'm here to represent.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for being here.
As well as I am as well. My name is Klaus Pay.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you for
Very good,
coming.
yeah.
Thank you both for being here.
Okay, you're the reporters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so as you can see, this is the first meeting after the April general election, municipal elections, I should say. So we're sort of establishing a baseline with the information that we can use to develop more plans as we go forward. So, yeah, thank you for being here. And at any time you want to come here and speak publicly with ideas that you may have being involved in the business world, please, by all means, feel free. All you have to do is let Ms. Lobeck know, and you would have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next meeting date is June 17th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And I want to thank everyone for a great meeting tonight as we get started with another year of economic development meetings. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for the input, great discussion, and I appreciate everyone's support.
Oh, you need a motion.
Oh, need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Preston, seconded by Mr. Galani, thank you. And Mr. Preston, you may notice sometimes I refer to people as council members, sometimes Mr. or Ms., and it may even be by the first name, so I tend to be somewhat informal sometimes.
That's how everyone calls me Chris.
All right, excellent. Okay, motion to adjourn, non-debatable, all those in favor say aye.
I.
Bye.
Opposed? Motion carries, meeting adjourned, thank you all.